So you've probably heard this on the violin. Or maybe this. And they both sound equally difficult, right? Well, actually, there is a world of difference in terms of difficulty of execution between these two. And there are many more pieces like that. But the question is, what makes a piece sound difficult when in fact it actually isn't? Today's video, we're gonna dive through a whole list of pieces. We're gonna go through and find out what makes a piece difficult and which ones are actually easy, so you can get some ideas as to which ones you want to practice as well. All right, let's begin. All right, so I have my trusty bucket here. For those of you who might recognize this bucket from the 100 violin giveaway, I've got a bunch of cards in here. We're just gonna be picking them at random and comparing these two. Okay, first up, we have Vivaldi Summer's third movement versus Vivaldi Winter's third movement. The Summer starts like this. And I would say that the Winter has this. I would say that between these two, probably the third movement of the Winter is more difficult. There's more scales, whereas in the third movement of the Winter, there's more shifts. In the Summer, everything's kind of more block fingering. See, I don't actually have to move my left hand at all. I'm pretty sure this round goes to the Winter third movement. All right, next up. Oh, this is a good one. Meditation de Thais versus Beau Soir. The meditation starts really beautifully. I think the Beau Soir is definitely more difficult though. Even as I was playing it, it's like got this different color, much more of a blue color, you know? But they're both like melodic pieces, but when color comes in as a factor, it starts to really give you another layer of focus that needs your attention. Beau Soir is the more difficult one. All right, moving on. Monti Czardas versus Fast Passage versus Ravel Tzigane, Coda. Monti Czardas Fast Passage, everyone knows this. And then the Ravel Tzigane, Coda, was like kind of got this. I mean, just even that alone, the fact that it's all on the G string. If you've seen my violin techniques video, you'll understand that like when you combine multiple elements of techniques together, that starts making things more difficult. And so later on, there's this part here. And there's like a playing of it back and forth with the speed as well. Whereas in the Monti Czardas, it's more on the same string. You can see my left hand's moving around a lot less. I think this is a little bit harder here. So yeah, this one definitely goes to Ravel Tzigane for being more difficult. Let's see here, what do we have? Ooh, this one's a classic. Bach Sonata number 1, G minor versus Bach Sonata number 2, A minor. First movement. Every violinist learns this. They're so similar they could be cousins. And then you have the A minor. Even the fugue is really similar as well. I would say that the easier one is definitely the G minor. And the reason why, you've got open strings, right? Anytime where there's open strings, you don't have to place a finger down on the left hand. So even the first chord of the G minor versus the first chord of the A minor. Like just getting the octaves there versus the fifth, the open G and D. Yeah, this one is going to G minor as being easier, Bach A minor being more difficult. All right, next one. Okay, Brahms Concerto second movement opening versus Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto second movement as well, opening. Yeah, well, Brahms Concerto. versus Mendelssohn's. I have to say, I feel like I have more butt clench moments in the Brahms. It's always a risk when you play this in concert. I mean, this one's tough because both are difficult. You need to have a basic level of comfortability in terms of shifting. You need to be able to get around the instrument both equally well. But I would say the Brahms is a little more difficult. Also musically, I think that the Mendelssohn is more flowing. It's like a walk in the park. The Brahms concerto kind of has a bit more of this yearning in it. I think that emotional pull always makes things more difficult because it adds to the tension of your physical, like your hands. Definitely the Brahms is more difficult out of these two, and the Mendelssohn's the more easy one. Well, so to speak, easy. Look, at the end of the day, you have to practice like a lot to get the technique up to a certain level. You're probably thinking, I'm not even gonna be able to play the easy stuff out of the repertoire we're going through today, and you're gonna give up. But I would urge you to keep going, keep practicing, and eventually you stop worrying about the technique and you can just focus on the music. That's the ideal place that you want to get to. And that's why I encourage you all to use Tonic. It's a free educational resource that you can use. You can open a practice room, you can meet others, you can ask them how they're practicing these pieces. People come in, give you feedback and encouragement. It's a lot of fun, it's really easy to use. So if this sounds cool to you and interesting, definitely give it a download. This QR code on my screen or from the link in my description below. All right, let's move on to the next one. Oh, Brahms Violin Concerto, third movement versus Bruch Violin Concerto, third movement. Both have very dude on a horse vibes. If you listen to it, you know what I'm talking about. It's like just like epic celebration right there. And then Bruch. I feel like the Bruch opening is more difficult, but Brahms just always scares me. I think it's that tension of what we talked about earlier, you know, in the sound. Bruch is more release. Brahms is kind of like, so both have arpeggios. The Brahms has that really tricky section here. And then Bruch has a similar section. It actually sounds pretty similar, right? When I'm playing the Bruch, it's a lot easier, probably because of the block fingering. Block fingering means that you move your whole hand in a block and it stays there versus having to constantly shift between individual notes. I would say the easier one definitely is the Bruch and the more difficult one is the Brahms. All right, moving on. Mozart Concerto number 5, first movement. Mozart Concerto number 4, first movement. Ooh. The fifth one is... Oh, actually, no, the fifth has the beginning, the solo part. I feel like number 5 is more virtuosic, but number 4 is like kind of awkward, you know, it's got this. I feel like I should just measure how difficult it is by how much facial expression I have to make. Oh, this one's tough. The fifth one, for me, it's easier because you can hide behind the virtuosity. Whereas number 4, it's more classic in style. For the fifth one, you know, Mozart also wrote a Turkish march in one of the movements there. It introduces an element that's not just Mozart. Just even in the beginning, the style of it's more swashbuckling, like this. I don't know, but I do know that number 5 sounds more difficult than it is, for sure. And number 4 sounds easier when in fact it is more difficult. So we'll leave it at that. Let's see. Oh, whoa. Berg Violin Concerto, Part 2, Allegro. Schoenberg Violin Concerto, third movement, Allegro. I don't know either of these pieces, so we have to listen to this first. Okay, that gives me a fair idea. I mean, there's definitely a strong sense of rhythm. This is definitely like more modern, contemporary, 12-tone music. Yeah, let's listen to what Schoenberg has. The Schoenberg seems more difficult to pull off. And I'm not by any means a 12-tone or serial expert here. The only serial that I am an expert in is The Breakfast Type. They both sound very difficult, but I'm gonna change the rules a little bit. Berg is easier to understand at first listen, just even listening to a little bit, than the Schoenberg. I think that that makes it difficult, but easier to pull off, versus the Schoenberg, which would be actually difficult and be difficult to pull off. Oh, well, we have two more. Ha! I didn't know that Flight of the Bumblebee would eventually appear. Versus, oh no, Barber Violin Concerto Third Movement. I already know. The Barber is way more difficult. You don't even have to listen to it. Also, I don't really know how to play Barber, but Flight of the Bumblebee I can play for you. It's just... It's pretty easy. It sounds impressive because of the fast repeated notes, but it's actually quite easy once you learn it. You really just have to focus on your right hand and making a strong spiky spiccato. That'll get you there. As we've seen in a few people, the notes don't seem to matter as much. But Barber Violin Concerto, the notes really do matter, as does the rhythm. You've got this, it's written in triple, but then it's like played in duple. You know, I still haven't learned it yet. I will learn it this year, that's my promise. But Barber Concerto Third Movement is definitely more difficult than the Flight of the Bumblebee. So that leaves us with our last one. Sibelius Violin Concerto Third Movement versus Khachaturian Violin Concerto First Movement. Definitely the Sibelius. And then the Khachaturian, actually, it does also start on D as well. So it has that drumming beat kind of vibe. In fact, the Khachaturian sounds a little more intense. But actually, having studied the Khachaturian, I would say the Sibelius is a little more difficult because Sibelius has this like higher kind of arpeggio. This part, that F sharp right there. And then the thirds, the run of the thirds with uppo staccato. The combination of just layering on so many different techniques, one after the other, versus the Khachaturian, that's what makes the Sibelius third movement so difficult. There we have it, guys. Thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed this video. And if you like this sort of video, you can definitely check out my tier list videos as well. We go through different types of categories from Paganini caprices to concertos. I'll see you in the next video or in your practice room on Tonic. Bye.